Okay, so for today's lesson, we're learning about Ulysses S. Grant, also known as U.S. Grant, and some other nicknames that we'll learn about later on. He was born in 1822, and he died in 1885. Just for reference, we are on page number 175, so that you can follow along in your book. Some important words to remember are surrender, that means to give up. Some important names are Ulysses S. Grant. He was the winning commander of all the Union armies during the last part of the Civil War. So he wasn't the general for the whole war, just for the last part. Julia Dent was his wife. Never give up. That's the title of the first part about Ulysses S. Grant. A circus had come to town, and in the circus was a very stubborn mule. No one could ride him. And someone did get on the mule's back, the mule would run around and kick up his heels. He would lower his neck and shake his head. That mule saw to it that no one sat on his back for a very long time. The owners of the circus were proud of their stubborn mule. They were so certain that no one could stay on the mule's back that they offered a prize to anyone who could. Every farm boy that came to the circus felt that he could ride that mule. In the 1800s, farmers used horses and mules to plow their fields and pull the wagons. From the time a farm boy was 8 or 9 years old, he learned to work with horses and mules. Each boy had his turn with the stubborn mule, and each time the mule kicked up his heels and threw the boy off his back. Then the mule would curl up in his lips and give a loud hee-haw, as if he were laughing with a crowd of people who were watching. Next, said the circus man, young Ulysses S. Grant came forward and climbed upon the mule's back. With a kick and a loud hee-haw, the mule threw Ulysses to the ground. Never give up, thought young Ulysses, as he got off the ground. He was determined to ride that mule again. The men were surprised when Ulysses asked for another chance to ride the mule. Every boy who tried to stay on the mule's back was thrown off. No one but Ulysses asked for another chance. The surprised owner nodded yes, and the crowd cheered. This time Ulysses got on the mule backward. He wrapped his leg around the mule's body, grabbed hold of the mule's tail, and held on. The mule kicked and shook, but Ulysses kept on riding. Ulysses was envied by every boy there when he stepped forward to collect his prize. So that's a little story. I know it might not seem important, but it's a little story about kind of the attitude that he had growing up, which was to never give up, to never surrender. And we'll find out about how that attitude, how that behavior kind of carries over into his life later on. Some important places on page number 176 are Appomattox, Virginia. This is the town in which General Lee surrendered to General Grant. This is something important that you will need to know for any future tests and quizzes. Appomattox, Virginia was the town where General Lee surrendered to General Grant. Training at West Point. So just like Robert E. Lee went to West Point, Ulysses S. Grant also went to West Point University to get training. When Ulysses was 17 years old, his father enrolled him in the West Point United States Military Academy, a special school for young men who want to become good officers in the Army. You will remember that Robert E. Lee also attended West Point. Ulysses studied there for 4 years, and when he graduated, he was officially an officer in the United States Army. So it wasn't like he had to start from the bottom as just a regular soldier and work his way up to an officer. When you went to this school, and it's even like this today, if you go to a special military school and get the training in the military school, when you graduate, you're an officer, you're not a regular soldier. So that's all for this video. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the war with Mexico and who he gets married to.